Thank you everybody for joining us. We are really excited to share our new capabilities and share some tips and tricks for our newest machine, our foil stamper. It's made by a company called Thermotype. This past January, Liz and we took one for the team and we went to Florida in January to look at this machine. And we really just wanted to see the manufacturing facility. We wanted to meet the people who are the brains behind the company, and we wanted to test the machine with a couple live jobs, which we did. We just want to make sure it was up to our quality expectations, and also we wanted to make sure we could run it ourselves. So that was in January, and about February we purchased the machine, and after a week or two we had it here via truck, and we had maybe a week of install and training, and now we're rocking and rolling, and we really spent the last, I don't know, 6 months or the first 6 months of the year learning how to use the machine, and to the point where we felt really confident that we can do a really good job. We were doing customer orders in the beginning of the year, and we kind of kept it on the down low, but we're ready to kind of get the word out. So that's why we're doing this now, and we're excited to tell you all the cool things it can do. But before I go too far, Alex, our PowerPoint wizard, has whipped up a sweet little presentation to share with you all a little history about foil stamping. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex here right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Give me just a second here. All right. Hello, everyone. We are enormously excited to welcome you to this, the fourth entry to our IndigoEdge webinar series. This entry marks a true watershed moment for Indigo Ink as we debut our new foil stamping capabilities. We purchased our foil stamper in February, and for the last 6 months, we have spent every moment learning how to make the most of it. We think we've barely scratched the surface, but we're ready to start teaching you what we know. Hot stamping is an old technology. The process of hot stamping was invented by the German bookbinder Ernst Oeser in 1892, and while the technology has improved, the concept remains the same. Squeeze a roll of foil between a hot engraved metal die and a sheet of paper, and the foil will transfer in the shape of the engraved design. That being said, the technology has improved in the last 132 years. Our machine was built in Florida in 2010. This is pure American engineering. The machine is ugly as sin, weighs the same as a small car, and is basically indestructible. Needless to say, we love it. The press can exert up to 20 tons of force at temperatures up to 300 degrees at up to 5,000 cycles an hour. That's like stacking 5 African elephants on top of one another, and then lighting a fire underneath them. And then doing it again, 90 times a minute. The results of all this elephant power speaks for itself. Foil stamping enables extremely fine detail, placed with incredible accuracy, using almost endless color and stock options directly on top of a printed background. That is a huge step up from our existing digital sleeking foil. The heart of the foil stamping process is the die itself. These dies are capable of much more than what we'll be discussing today. In the future, look out for how-tos on blind, multi-level, and combination effects. Today, we're focusing on flat and embossed foil effects and traditional die cutting, which you can see on the samples we've produced for this session. As we learn more, we'll pass the knowledge along to you. Hot stamping dies can be made of magnesium, copper, or brass, and are produced with computer-controlled milling machines or with chemical etching. There's a lot to know. The good news is, you don't need to worry about any of it. The choice of material and manufacturing is made based on the design and production details, and we will always prioritize the quality of the end result. There are a few limitations I should call out before I turn things over to Matt. First, although your design can be as complex as you like, hot stamping works on Highlander rules. There can only be one design per die. This means hot stamping is not suitable for variable data. Our press is also limited to a maximum die size of slightly more than 10 by 13 inches. Going larger will require some additional lead time. Third, die pricing is based on the size of the die itself. Larger dies are more expensive, so if you have a design that requires multiple foil elements across the page, talk to us about breaking it up into a few smaller dies, which we can use simultaneously. And finally, not all foils are made equal. Every manufacturer has a list of colors and finishes, and each foil within that library has multiple formulations based on how it will be used. If you have a special request or would like something we haven't tried before, build in some additional lead time for testing. With that, I'll turn the rest of our time today over to Matt, who has learned the machine and the process inside and out, and has only been burned a few dozen times in the process.
That is true, sadly. I've given my fingers to this machine.
Nothing.
All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so yeah, this is foil sample 1, and this is the round die cut piece. It's, you know, a drink coaster, whatever you might want it to be, a little frisbee. But yeah, we use it as drink coaster. And if you look on the back, you'll see a QR code. If you scan that, it'll take you to our website where the file samples are. But this, just so you know, it's pretty thick. This is actually 2 sheets of paper. It's a 120-pound eggshell. It's Mohawk Superfine eggshell, 120-pound cover, glued together. So 2 sheets glued together. So we printed the back, and then we foil stamped the front. We glued them together, and then we die cut them. Or then we die cut them. But for the file, I'll show you here. This is a really simple one, so I just wanted to start with an easy illustration of how a foil file is set up when it is just foil. So this one is, excuse me, it's pretty simple. I have 2 layers here. One is for the die cut and one for the foil. So for the foil, literally, all I do is set up the file with black ink, and it's really ready to go. In this case, we had a die cut, so not all jobs have a die cut, I recognize, but if this was just a job where you were foil stamping and that's it, the file's set up. This is super easy. In this case, we did have a die cut, so I set that up as 100% magenta. This was a 3.5-inch circle. But again, this one's super easy. And I'm going to stop the share real quick, and so you can see my camera. This is what the die looks like, and this is a 3-up die, so we have the logo 3 times across. So this is just a good old-fashioned 1/4-inch thick copper die. And then for the die cutting part, this is kind of hard to see, but there's a little metal blade in here in between this rubber. There's 3 of them, so this is a 3-up die. So we foil stamp 3-up, and then we die cut 3-up on this one. And I'm going to show you a quick video of the die cut running here. Bear with me. Can't find my video. Here we go. All right, so I'm just going to show you this real quick. This is, we're die cutting. This is face down, just so I can get it lined up right. But this is going to show you what it looks like going through the machine. So this is the machine bringing it in, aligning it, and it gets stamped in that bigger brown part in the middle. And then we just pop them out by hand. You can see they come out pretty easily. That's Angus in the background. All right, so that is an example of a really simple die foil stamp, and then a pretty simple 3.5-inch round die cut. And before I move on, I mentioned that I'll take questions. This is a pretty simple one, but if anybody has any questions, let me know. And Liz is watching the chat box for questions, or if you just want to take yourself off mute, you can shout it out.
Matt, you may have covered this, but was there a certain color that you wanted people to set their file up as for
Yeah.
the foil?
Generally speaking, we want the color to be black because ultimately when we send the dies out, the file out to be turned into a die, it needs to be black. But some people frequently, I'll get into this later, set up their files. Maybe they make it gold because that's what their file's gonna or their foil's gonna be. As long as we can easily change that color to black, then it's fine. But yeah, black is the best color for that. All right, so no questions on that. Pretty simple one. We're going to move on to foil sample number 2, which is this really cool greeting card. Pete Birch designed this one, and probably can't see it on the screen. We used a really fine, it's like little tiny polka dots, rainbow foil on the feather. It's kind of trippy. I like it. So this one here is just one step up. It's kind of the same as the last one, but to Liz's question, what color do we want to use? And here I have this as 100% magenta, so it's real easy to see the foil. For us, as the printer, when a client sends us a file, it's helpful to see exactly where the foil is. But the biggest thing that you can do is set up the file as 2 layers. And we love Illustrator because we can go into the file and look at the layers. And when we turn off foil and turn it on, we can see exactly what the foil elements are. Not all dies are straightforward. Sometimes, we've had dies where, it looks like this is everything, just a feather, but there's a couple of highlight pieces throughout. And we may miss it if you don't have it on its own layer. So if we turn off the CMYK layer, all we see is foil. And for us, before we send this file out, we would change this to 100% black. And then it's ready to go to the die maker. So again, this is another easy one. Probably not a lot of questions on it, but just in case, let me know if you have a question. Feel free to go in the chat or speak up. You can take it off mute. But if not, I'm going to move on to the next one. So yeah, I'm keeping it easy at first here. This next
Matt.
one, yeah.
Got a question
There's
in the
an-
chat. Is it okay to send the file as a PSD from Photoshop instead of Adobe Illustrator? Do the foil files need to be in vector format?
Oh, good questions. Okay, so technically, yes. You could send them to us as a PSD file. We would probably also want you to send them, or we would want you to send them as a PDF also. If the file can easily, if the color can easily be changed from whatever you send it to us in to black, it's fine. Otherwise, we'll need a 100% black version of the file. Vector works great. However, we do have a lot of clients that they'll create a painting and they'll convert some of those parts of the painting to foil, and they do that in Photoshop, and I believe they make it a bitmap. But as long as it's clear, it'll work. It doesn't have to be vector. But again, ultimately, the biggest thing to get across here is as long as it is black, 100% solid black, or we can turn it to 100% solid black, then we're fine. Good question. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. And we'll go on to the next one. This one's super simple, but the whole idea here is that we can do a foil stamped envelope now. So this is set up exactly the same way the first 2 are. I'm illustrating here again. Some customers send the foil part as 100%, not as 100% black, but like maybe the gold color they want. All we do is go in there and we change it to black, and then we send off the file. But this one is just to show you all that we can do a foil stamped envelope, but it's static, right? We can't do variable foil like we do on other things on envelopes. So this is just static. It could be on the flap, it could be on the top left corner like it is here. But this is to let you know this is the first time in our history that we can foil stamp envelopes, which is really exciting. Before I move on, I won't stop sharing here. Does anybody have any questions? You guys see anything in the chat?
Hey, Matt, there's a question. Is there a preference between sending a PDF or an Adobe Illustrator file?
Another good question. Reed, that is, I was working with another client. She's actually on this call. She sent us AI files with all all the supporting documents. It was great. The AI was awesome because she had it all set up perfectly. So if the AI file is set up in layers, then definitely send that. Yeah, you'd put them in layers, definitely. I see that in the chat. So yeah, if they're set up in layers, then that's great. Saves us a bit of work from having to import them and convert them into, if the PDF might need some flattening. So yeah, the AI is great. PDF's not a bad idea too to send, so that we can see what it all looks like put together. In the sense that, like, if you have the foil element maybe called out, as hot pink or gold, and then the rest of the CMYK in the PDF file, then we can see exactly where things line up. Joanne asked if you need to name the layers foil. No, actually you don't. For the layers, it doesn't really matter. You can just name it foil, foil stamp, whatever you want. This, since it's not going to the Indigo, it doesn't have to be the same naming convention as the Indigo, which is kind of picky. Good questions.
So just to point out, that's in contrast to the digital foil, which we
Yeah,
do use the
yeah.
Indigo.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we'll talk about it when you use digital versus traditional a little bit at the end here. But correct, for the traditional foil, it's a little more forgiving in the file setup in a way. All right. So if there's no more questions, I'm going to move on to the fourth sample here. And I'm going to show, actually, I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a quick second. I want to show everybody what this die looks like. So this is a foil emboss, so it's like a raised emboss. So this die is a little different than the other ones. These are actually made out of bronze, and the part that gets foiled and embossed is actually, it stands up a bit taller. But the this also comes with a counter. So on the press, these go together, and the copper die or the bronze die and the counter, they work together to give you a nice embossed look on the paper. But they're more expensive. They take a little bit more time. So this is a fancier effect, but we do love it. It looks really cool. And you should have samples that have the blue feather. They're bigger, and you can feel it. It's really tactile, and it's really fun. So that's the kind of die that we need to make for this. And now I'm going to share my screen again. And
Hey, Matt, before we jump to this next one, there's a question about envelopes,
oh, okay.
which I just lost. Hold on. When
Yeah.
you did the screen share, I lost my chat. Do you see the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
So the question is, for envelopes, do you convert it in order to prevent bruising the back of the envelope? So I see Alex answered there. We don't convert. We don't have a way to convert, unfortunately. It is challenging, I will say, to not get the back of the envelope to bruise, because we want to make sure the foil looks good on the front. If you look at the sample that we sent out, there is a little bruising on the back. I wasn't able to completely get around that, so it is something to watch out for. But by not converting, I mean, we can do this and have them done quickly. If it's on the flap, theoretically, if the actual stamp's on the flap, we can open the envelope up and send it through and just foil stamp the flap, and then it wouldn't matter if it bruises a little bit. But that is a good question.
And then there's one more
Yeah.
question / comment. And she's asking, are you using AI as our Adobe
Yeah.
Illustrator as a generic term for
Mhm.
vector? Because
Well,
she uses.
yeah, that's a good question. I was using it in the sense of Illustrator because that's what my mind was going to, but you're right. It could just be a vector file. As long as we can pull the file into Illustrator, if we didn't make changes, we're fine. So if you create it with a different program and save it as an EPS, that's fine. We should be able to handle that, no problem. Yep. Oh, and also Alex in the chat mentions the paperweight does make a difference on the envelope and the finish. This envelope happened to be felt, so it took a little bit more pressure to get the foil into the nooks and crannies of the felt paper. But a smoother envelope would bruise less.
Matt, when you go on to the share screen, you've got the thing in front of it, so nobody
Yeah.
can see it.
Yeah, no. All right, I'll lower it. Okay, thanks for telling me. And this one is, again, this is a super easy one. Looks like I messed up my file setup because I have everything in the same layer, but the idea is the same. You know, we just need to be able to separate out the foil. So in this case, we can separate out the foil dye, which is this 100% magenta one, and I can turn off all these other elements here. But you can see why it's so important to have it in two separate layers. We won't even have to do that. And then what I would do is just convert this to 100% black. And then we would be good to go. So for us, the biggest thing for a embossed foil die is that we know what paper we are stamping, because it will change how much relief is on the die. And the die maker will handle that on their end. So again, that file setup's pretty easy. Does anybody have any questions?
Got one in chat.
Are there any stock?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, all stocks. Yeah, actually, good question, Joanne. So far, I haven't found a stock that I can't stamp or that we can't stamp. So it's much more user friendly than, you know, the digital foil, whereas that has to be pretty smooth. This, we've been stamping, you know, felt and cotton. And yeah, oh yeah, 120 is a good one. We can do that. Have not tried rigid vinyl, although that is something I don't think that would work because it would have to be heat stable, and this is a pretty hot process. I think it would melt the vinyl, but we can try it. We can talk to the folks who make this machine too. And Alex mentions that we have stamped over top of laminate. That looks really good too. We can do it on top of soft touch. We can also do digital foil stamping over soft touch. So there's some overlap there. Depending on the quantity, we might go digital if it was going to be on top of a laminate, if it was a soft touch laminate. But if you need it on top of a gloss laminate, we can do that. No problem.
Matt, did you mention what paper we ran the sample on? The one you just went
This
over?
one was 120 pound. Yeah, 120 pound Mohawk Everyday Digital. Smooth. Yep. Oh, sorry, I missed that question, Vicky. Yep, 120 pound Everyday Digital. All right. So
Matt, go ahead.
Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, are there any limitations, fine lines, anything that we should be avoiding when we're designing?
Yeah, you know, that one is a good question too, because we did run into some problems, and I haven't sent this out yet, but we created a test die that had it has a serif and a sans serif font on here, and I'll hold it up here even though it's obnoxious. You can see it's a knockout and not a knockout, and then there's some lines here that we were testing. So I can tell you that a 0.5, a half a point line works pretty well. Even a quarter point line worked okay. It starts to get a little harder, but it still worked pretty well. But if you knock that out, it doesn't work. If it's knocked out, it would have to be about a whole point. And then I'll also say the sans serif fonts work better if it's knocked out, but they serif and sans serif fonts both worked fine if it's not a knockout. And one day we'll do a mailing, but you can see on this sample, I know you can't read that, but the knockouts here show us, you know, what works and what doesn't. Yeah, we can send a photo of that card too. So yeah, Joanne asked a question. How does this process add to production time, and what should we allow knowing dies need to be made? So Production time is longer than digital. Right now, we're saying what are we saying? 5 to 7 or 7 to 10? I've forgotten. Let's say longer, 7 to 10 days for now. But part of that is getting the dies made, so that takes a couple days. Depending on how many dies there are, and depending on how quickly we can process the order. If we order dies by 2 o'clock, and then we pick the next day shipping option, which is more money, so it all depends on, you know, speed and budget, but we can get them the next day. So order comes in, we process the files, we place the die order by 2 o'clock, and we pick the next day shipping option, which we get a pretty good discount for. Then we have the dies the next day. So that's pretty fast. So really,
So is that 7 to 10 working days or?
working days, yeah.
Okay, so about, I would say closer to, so 2 weeks basically,
Yeah, 2 weeks. We do
unless
our
you want
best.
to expedite and
Yeah, yeah,
do rushes. Okay,
exactly. We do our best, you know, to knock these out as fast as we can, but that just gives us a little wiggle room if things go bad. Every now and then I've gotten a die in that was bad, that needs to be redone. You know, very rare. It's happened twice where a die has come in and it had a little dent on it. But you know, those kind of things add more time and it's just kind of out of our control. And since the process does take longer, actually, I'm going to show you another video here in a second, but the process does take longer just because we have to, it's not digital really at all, except for the fact that a computer does control some aspects of it, but the manual part of it is we have to attach the die to a metal chase. And each time you do that, it could take 10 minutes, it could take 20 minutes to get everything lined up perfectly. And you can imagine some jobs are easier than other jobs. Some jobs don't really require that much alignment, and other jobs require really super precise alignment. So it kind of just depends on what mix we have and what that particular set of jobs has that is going to require more time. But we certainly, you know, will do our best for everybody out there for turnaround times. I'm going to go back a quick second because I want to show you something. I have to queue something up first. Okay, so I'm going to show you a different video of the machine running here. And this is one of our clients. She's on this call. This is Darlene Lemon. She makes amazing cards. And just one of the things that we do to speed up production. And the cool thing about this foil press is that we can make a 1-up die, but still run it 2-up because even though it is old school in the sense that we have to manually put the die on the chase, that sort of thing, a computer does control how many times we can hit the same die down the page. So you'll see this is set up as a 2-up job. So it'll stamp and then stamp again. So I'm just going to hit play. And it's feeding on the feed side. And you can see it stamping, the leftover stamp. And then on the output side, they're coming out and they're 2-up. And then after we finish stamping, we cut them down and then we score and fold. So you can see this one. So the cool thing about this is for us to get the efficiency of running 2-up, we did not need to buy a 2-up die. We just bought a 1-up die. All right, so. And then I'm going to show you real quick here. That die, you can't really see it, but this is what the die looked like for that job. And even though it was 2-up, we just told the press to repeat. And it does it. It's great. Saves us a lot of time. All right. I think that was the last of my samples, wasn't it?
Yeah, you were gonna review the one card that had the color and
Oh,
the foil.
Right.
Which is not something we sent in the.
Yeah, we didn't set this one, or send this one out, but this is just an example of a greeting card. This is one of ours. We did it for some marketing here, But you can see in this one how the foil is on top of color. Totally fine, totally easy with this machine. All you do, set it up the same way. You don't have to worry about necessarily knocking it out with overprint, because we're going to turn off the CMYK layer, make a die. Of course, just like the other ones, I would go in here, I would change it 100% black. And then when we get the die back, we print this file and then we foil stamp directly right on top of the CMYK. Registration is pretty good on this machine too, by the way. If there are tight registrations, we can hit it pretty well. All right. I think that was the last thing I wanted to show. I'm looking at all my samples on my desk here. So anybody out there have any more questions? Oh, Stephanie Martin, can you foil stamp labels? You know, I don't know if we've tried that, but I don't see any reason why we can't. We would have to use our 12x18 label stock. We have that uncoded and coded. So yeah, I think we can do that, no problem. I know we can digitally foil stamp our uncoded labels. Can we do our coded ones, Alex?
No, the coded does not play nicely with digital.
Okay, all right, I couldn't remember. That's the one where the foil sticks to the entire sheet, no matter what you do. Yeah, okay. So yeah, we can, I'm certain we can do it. I don't see any reason why that would be a problem.
Can you talk to us a little bit about when we would use digital foil versus traditional?
Yeah. So there's a couple or many more than a couple reasons. One, if you want to use a textured stock in your project, then you definitely are going to need to do hot foil stamping, traditional foil stamping. If you want to do an envelope, you have to do traditional. With our digital foils, we only have a limited number of colors that we have access to, because not all foils are engineered to work digitally. With the traditional hot foil stamping foils, there are so many more colors. So that's another consideration. And also, if you just want that kind of that debossed, slightly debossed feel on your card, it has to be traditional foil. But the other thing that would kind of go into the equation too, if your paper is smooth and you're picking a foil stamp color that is digital and traditional, then we may decide, oh well, it's cheaper, we can do it digitally, or if it's over a certain number of sheets, we want to go traditional. And I was doing some quick math, and let's say for a 5x7 card, if the foil doesn't touch any color, oh, and that's the other consideration, if the foil and color touch, you have to go traditional, unless we do a soft touch laminate and then foil on top of that digitally, which we've covered in a previous webinar. But a 5x7 card with foil, about 100 sheets of 12x18, so that's 400 cards. That was about where I noticed in the pricing that it made more sense to do digital, but after 400, it starts making a lot of sense to pay for the die, pay for the make ready, which is setting up the plate on the press. Which leads me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, paying for the die. Die costs are all based on size, like Alex mentioned in his video. So the bigger the die, the bigger the foil area, the more it's going to cost. So that's another consideration too when you're talking about digital versus traditional. It all kind of gets mixed into this decision making operation. But generally speaking, if we're just doing one die, the price is about $125. That's for the die. That includes shipping. But if you're doing multiple jobs at the same time, let's say it's a 3-piece wedding suite, or 5 foil stamp cards. If you get all the dies at the same time, or if we order all the dies at the same time, then we're saving a little bit of processing time, and we're saving shipping. And that could be 60, 75 bucks a die, depending on the size, and then shipping. So a lot cheaper than 125 if you were just doing one.
I'll chime in on the digital foil as well. The other two areas where it makes more sense to run digital is, first off, variable data. So personalized place cards, anything like that. Digital, we can do that it's trivially easy versus making 100 different dyes,
Mhm.
and also the complexity of the design. If you have an extremely complex design with a lot of fine line work and script, the results off of traditional foil stamping are basically always going to be better.
Yeah, yeah, it looks so good. I mean, and I think our digital foil looks great too, and it still has a place, and we do it every day. But yeah, the good point on the variable, Alex. Somebody else had a good question. And the question is, in regard to the embossed foil, is the file set up different than flat foil? And no, it's the same exact setup. And then the rest of that question is that the process to get the emboss effect via stamping, or is that file some kind of a 3D vector multi-layer setup? And so the answer is no, it's not a 3D setup. This is a simple embossed die. There are other ones that are more like that, where there's multi-layers, and it's called a sculptured die. And we didn't want to dig into that yet because we have not done a sculptured die for anybody yet. We want to practice with that on our own. Sculpture dies have many layers, and you actually have an artist involved because they're made a bit by hand. So that's also a really good question. So I'm going to read another question here. So I'll answer the easy one first. Do you store dies for clients for future use? And the answer is yes, we do. We'll see how much storage space we need as the years go on, because I'm kind of surprised at how many dies we have already. Reed asks, you mentioned that textured stocks would require a die foil, but I believe you've done digital foil on the Mohawk eggshell. Is that smooth enough that you still get good results with digital? Yeah, so we've been playing around with that too. The slightly textured stocks like an eggshell from Mohawk or Nina, we have, and even sometimes with Reish, I'm going to get myself in trouble here, Alex. We have been able to digitally foil jobs. As we've learned more about that and different things we can do on the Indigo to build up layers of ink, we've had some success with that. I also would say that it does depend on the design. Super intricate designs with a lot of finer lines tend to have trouble, more trouble on the textured papers, doing the foil digitally. But that's a really good question.
Yeah, and I'll chime in and say that on some of these textured papers that we've run digitally, sometimes we do have to throw out half the job and run more just to get the count. So it sometimes is a frustrating experience. We've also been known to run it through the machine just to squish it and then run it again to foil stamp. So we have managed to make these textured stocks work for digital, but it hasn't always been a very easy process.
Yeah, the whole squishing thing, that was a scarring incident. We won't have to talk about that anymore. Does anybody else have any other questions about hot foil stamping or anything, digital foil stamping? Just want to know how we're doing. Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that, Reed. I think we did a digital foil on eggshell for Reed, and it turned out good. So thanks, Reed. Does anybody out there have any questions or want to bring up anything else? Thank you, guys. Joanne, I'm all for it. Yeah, let's start designing some foil projects. I love it. Well, yeah, if nobody has any questions, we've stuck to our time. We actually beat our time a bit, so this is good.
Yeah, it
We're
was
seeing a lot of
great.
really thankful and positive comments here. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for coming out.
I
Yeah.
can't
It
wait
looks like
until
we
we
might
do
have,
something.
I can't wait either.
looks like we might have one more question coming in from Blaze.
Okay, all right, perfect. Yeah, we might have one more question. Thank you, everybody. This has been really fun. And it's really been a nice challenge for me personally, I'll say, because we did not buy the machine with me running it in mind, and this is temporary. I'm not going to be running this forever. But it's been really fun to learn something that I've seen over and over and over again, and just to kind of get to know the process has been an enjoyable time. And like Alex said, I did get burned a lot, but that's part of learning. Made a lot of mistakes, but we've just started training another person here, so there'll be 3 people who can stamp, thankfully. So the question here is, can you talk a bit about a multifoil color job setup or show some examples? I don't think I have any examples of multifoil colors. It's really kind of the same, mostly. And one thing we didn't talk about is we actually can run 2 foil colors at the same time, as long as, I'm going to find an example here on my desk. As long as the foils don't overlap going the direction that we run it. So in this particular case with the feather that's foiled in the middle, I couldn't run any foil, a separate color in line, but let's just say at the top here, these words at the top I wanted to foil, I could do that with a different color with a different dye at the same time. So we have the ability to run 2 foils at the same time. They just can't overlap anywhere going down the sheet. So you can see how these don't overlap. Now, as far as like a multi-foil job where, you know, we foil, then we foil on top of that again, I actually have never done that. But I think we could totally do that. So one question says, so couldn't you do 2 colors of on a spine? And yeah, I think we could. It'd just be 2 separate runs if needed. Although we could run the 2 foils at the same time. So it could work.
Matt, it was a little while back, but we did have an order that required 2 separate passes, one for an emboss and one for a foil stamp. So I know there's precedent for it. You just need a separate die for each pass.
Yeah. So on that, I wonder if, now that we know a little bit more, if we could have had a combo die made that had the emboss and do the foil at the same time. So I'm wondering.
So it depends on the design, whether or not it could be done in one pass, or we would need 2 dies
Yeah.
for the 2 separate runs.
Yeah. Somebody asked if it's double the cost. No, not really. If we can run the 2 foils at the same time and we can put both dies on the chase at the same time, it all happens at the same time. So really, it just adds a little bit of foil cost, but it's not going to be that much. And then
But if it's 2 dies, it would be. If it's 2 dies, it would be on the setup, like not the paper part.
Right. Yeah, good point. Because we have to pay for 2 dies, and then putting 2 dies on the chase to align them. Somebody asked, how do you align? So several different ways. We've come up with a method. So I don't have an example of this, but we ran enclosure cards, 3 different dies across the sheet, and there were 8 down the sheet. So each die was separate because we wanted to be able to, if there was a reprint, we didn't want them to be connected. We wanted them to be able to be used independently. So we had Alex, we had Alex print the dies lined up on a clear vinyl, and then we cut that to size and we flipped it over so it's backwards, and we used that as a guide for where to put the dies on the press. So it was a little painstaking, but at the same time, we gained a lot of efficiency because we didn't have to, run the same sheet through the press 3 times and do 3 different setups. So, yeah, we figured that one out. And somebody asked, yeah, so we can do. So they asked, can you do a blind emboss, deboss? Yep, we can totally do that. No foil needed. Not a problem. Another person asked, what's a minimum run you can do on this machine? Well, so we can really run any quantity. It's just, when does it start making sense, right? Because, let's say you have to buy a die, and that's, say, $125, and then there's a make ready in foil. You can already be into it, $250 with make ready foil and die. But, depending on your piece, it may make sense. A lot of times for stationery, like for instance, a wedding invite, those are pretty small runs. Sometimes it's 75 or 100, maybe 150. But, if you're going for a certain look, then there's only one way to do it. You pay the die and we set it up and we do it. But technically, the minimum just comes down to the cost to do 1 or 10. It's almost the same. Or 1, 10, 50. It's almost the same. Another person asked, what's the range of foil colors, and is there a color book for that? So we are still learning all the colors we can do. Alex ordered a ton of books when we got the machine. There are many, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of colors out there and different manufacturers. We are currently using Infinity foils mostly. We get our foil from them, and we get our dyes from one of their other companies. I think it's called United Engraving. And they do a good job. So we've been building a good relationship with them. So we've been pretty much exclusively getting our foils from them. However, if we needed to get a foil from somebody else, we can do that.
But you can go on Infinity's website and see their colors. I
Yeah.
mean, generally, it's not gonna look exactly the same on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, somebody asked a good question. Can you get custom color foils? I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me that, but I'm gonna look into that.
I can answer that. Yes, but there's usually a minimum order quantity required, and it's pretty cost prohibitive.
Okay. But technically it could, so you're saying there's a chance.
It could technically be done. It just doesn't always make sense depending on the size of the run.
Okay. Excellent.
And honestly, there are so many colors of foil available already that it would be extremely rare that would be required.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, now that we know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, might have gotten to the last question there. If I missed anything, I apologize. But
And if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me or any one of us. We're happy to help.
yeah. You can tell we're having fun with this. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you everybody for joining. We really appreciate your time. I know time is expensive these days. I'm sure you have a billion things to do, and it means a lot that you took an hour out of your day to hang out with us. So thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.